Rob Butler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak in this debate with mixed emotions. Pleased that the important topic of water safety and the prevention of drowning is being raised in this House, but with sorrow because it stems from a tragic loss, that of 12-year-old Suna Khan, who drowned in May in the sea close to the pier at Bournemouth. Suna's mum, Stephanie, is a constituent of mine and is in the public gallery this afternoon with her own mother. And may I, Madam Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the entire House, extend our deepest sympathies, our condolences to Stephanie and to her family, and also to the family and friends of the young man who died the same day at Bournemouth, Joe Abess. Joe was just 17. Madam Deputy Speaker, Stephanie told me a little bit about her daughter. She said, Suna was such a happy girl with a large, multi-faith family and more friends than I've ever had in my life. She was so smart and bright, extremely pretty and very tall. She was the glue that held our family together. She went on, the summer holidays are fast approaching, and I'm concerned about the likelihood that more parents will receive the devastating news that their child has drowned. This pain I could not wish upon my worst enemy. It is a pain that has no word to describe it. The only thing getting me through is the thought that I may be able to do something to prevent this from happening again. And that, Madam Deputy Speaker, is why we are here today, to try to improve water safety as we approach the summer holidays and with World Drowning Prevention Day on the 25th of July. Last month, the Royal Life-Saving Society UK, the RLSS, published its National Drowning Report, an event that was marked here in Parliament that was attended by Mr. Speaker. And I'm very grateful to the RLSS for assisting me in preparing for today's debate and allowing me to quote from its report in detail, a report that was supported by the National Water Safety Forum that comprises numerous charities and organisations dedicated to improving safety in the water, including ROSPA. The report makes sobering reading. Last year, there were 226 water-related accidental fatalities in the UK. And although that was a fall from the previous year, the number of children who died increased by 46% compared to the 5-year average. In Suna's case, it's thought that there was a rip current or a rip tide off Bournemouth's beach on that terrible day. In her email to me, Stephanie said, the water should be a safe space for people to enjoy, especially on a life-guarded beach. And if it can't be made safe, then people shouldn't be allowed to swim in it. She went on, I'm not naive, and I understand that the sea is a natural and an unpredictable body of water. But this does not mean that more can't be done to reduce the prevalence of drowning. I'm 32 years old and only learned what a rip current was last year when I went to Cornwall. And to be honest with you, I'm still unsure what exactly it is. Now, I'm a nurse and an educated woman. I would say I'm fairly intelligent, and I think if I only learned that last year, there'll be thousands of people who get into the water every year who don't know what a riptide is. More worrying still is that I myself only knew how to escape a rip current after my daughter's death. Which means, again, thousands of people will not know this. None of my other children knew what a rip current was. To me, this is unacceptable, she says. I believe this is a matter for Parliament to address in how they can make sure this does not happen again. I need to do something to honour my daughter and protect other children from this harm. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me address that specifically now, quoting from the Royal Life-Saving Society website. It explains that rip currents are currents of water typically flowing from the shoreline back out to sea, and they're commonly formed by a build-up of water on the beach itself that's caused by a wave or by tidal motion. Crucially, its advice on how to escape riptides is as follows. Do not swim against the current. Try to swim parallel to the shore. This makes sure that you're swimming out of and not back into the rip current. And once out of the rip current, then try to swim towards the shore, but being careful to avoid being drawn back in by the feed currents. Of course, Madam Deputy Speaker, whilst that advice now forms part of the official record of the House of Commons, We must recognise that few children are watching our proceedings this afternoon or reading Hansard. So there is a strong case for water safety to be taught to children in particular, and the most obvious way to do so is at school. And I'm therefore glad that the Minister responding this afternoon is from the Department for Education, and I'm grateful to her for the conversation we've already had this afternoon about this topic. Because this is not the first time such concerns have been raised in Parliament. In 2021, a petition achieved more than 108,000 signatures calling for, and I quote, increased curriculum content about water safety as part of swimming lessons. That was debated on the 12th of July that year. And as we speak, the noble Lord Storey has a private member's bill before their Lordship's House, which would, and again I quote, require the Secretary of State to include water safety and training in prevention of drowning as a compulsory part of the curriculum for all schools in England. And I have notified His Lordship that I will be referring to that in this House today. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise that there are countless requests to the Department for Education to add subjects to the curriculum. And likewise, I know that already many schools do provide swimming lessons, though this is not quite the same as teaching water safety in its broadest sense. However, according to the RLSS, provision for children to access statutory school swimming is decreasing. And worryingly, it adds that children from low-income and ethnically diverse communities are particularly less likely to access statutory school swimming. Now, this must surely be of concern to all of us when we also know that it is children from low-income and ethnically diverse communities who are disproportionately overrepresented in child drownings. Indeed, the thematic report by the National Child Mortality Database at Bristol University that was published only this morning found that in cases of drowning, the death rate for children and young people living in the most deprived neighbourhoods was more than twice that of children and young people living in the least deprived neighbourhoods, and that children described as black or black British have the highest death rate, more than 3 times that of white or white British background. So I would respectfully suggest to the Minister that it is worth giving additional consideration to increasing education on water safety in our schools. There are also other ideas to increase awareness closer to the water itself. One way is to alert children and adults about the risks through the increased provision of signs at the beach. And this is something that Stephanie has particularly asked me to bring to the attention of this House as a recommendation, because she believes that this would bring a significant benefit. After all, if you see a sign immediately before entering the water, the advice will be very fresh in the mind. Now, the RNLI does have a standard sign that can be used to warn about rip currents, and I've been pleased to learn that it is used in many places, but obviously not everywhere, and therefore there is undoubtedly scope for even more prominent displays of warnings. Stephanie has also asked me to make another suggestion regarding the visibility of swimmers. Sadly, it took a very considerable amount of time to find Suna in the water, and that may be because she was wearing a dark-coloured swimming costume. So Stephanie would like to see far more brightly coloured swimwear so that people can be easily identified in the water in the case of an emergency. Stephanie said to me, every minute counts. If Suna had been wearing something bright, she might still have been here. This is a message that is endorsed by life-saving charities. As the RNLI pointed out, lifeboats are orange, specifically so that they can be seen in poor conditions. So bright or fluorescent swim hats and tow floats are particularly effective. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is particularly important to recognise that deaths don't only occur at the coast. In fact, last year, 60% of fatalities were on inland waterways. They can be rivers or canals, lakes or lochs, quarries or reservoirs. So water safety matters to everyone, wherever they live, whether it's by the sea or inland. In fact, last year, 90% of the children who drowned in open water died inland. Now, Honourable and Right Honourable members may recall that shortly before Christmas, 4 children died at a lake in Kingshurst in Solihull, in the constituency of my honourable friend, the member for Meriden. He too is campaigning to improve teaching on water safety with the Department for Education, and asked me to remind the House of that this afternoon. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is not an issue that affects only children. Far from it. Last year, the average age of an accidental death at inland water was 35. At the coast, it was 51. So we need to ensure that we raise awareness in an age-appropriate way. And I pay tribute to the many organisations that are already working to achieve this, including the RLSS, who I've referred to, the Canal and River Trust, the National Water Safety Forum, the RNLI, Swim England, and the National Fire Chiefs Council. Whatever our age, there is clear advice from the RNLI on how to keep safe in the water. Swim at a life-guarded beach between the red and yellow flags. In an emergency, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard if you're at sea, or for fire if you're inland. And if you find yourself in difficulty in the water, float to live. And there is more detail on all of those tips on the RNLI website. Madam Deputy Speaker, the summer holidays are almost upon us. Many of us will be heading to lakes, rivers and the coast to spend time relaxing. The water is a great place to enjoy, but we need to do it safely. Because at the moment, too many people are dying when they don't need to. As Stephanie says, we can do better. There is no need for this to keep happening. It is preventable. If we teach it at school, we are setting them up for a lifetime of safe water.